Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, unamulwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their librarians, their principal, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcasts. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We would also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. We have an fantastic online magazine. It is called Reading with Your Kids. You're going to find some fantastic writing in the magazine, great author profiles, cooking with your kids, recipes, STEM activities you can do with your kids, find out what games you can play with your kids. So much there on the Reading with Your Kids online magazine, and it is free, and it is available at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from the beautiful state of California. Our guest is here today to celebrate her middle grade novel. It's called Project F. Please welcome to the show, Jeanne DuPreau. Hey, Jeanne, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And how are you?
Wonderful. I'm excited for you to tell us all about this great new middle grade novel.
Well, I don't know that I can tell you all about it without revealing things I'd rather not reveal. But I can tell you that it takes place in the future, where things are very different from the way they are now. And you can't really call him a hero, but its star character is a boy named Keith, who is 13. And at the beginning of the book, he goes on a trip, which accidentally connects him with a mysterious project that he wants to find out more about.
Fascinating. So, hundreds of years in the future, what does your future look like? Are we talking something like Star Trek, or is it more the future after something terrible here has happened?
It is the latter. Definitely not Star Trek. It is a world that I am imagining might be possible after the worst effects of climate change have really altered human civilization. But there have been survivors who have created their own civilization now. So it's not clear in the book whether that is 300 years from now, 300 years from sometime in the future that we haven't got to yet, 500 years more. It's just, I really picture that, once things a lot of things have been destroyed about the way we live now, it'll take a while for something new to arise.
Yeah. There are a lot of folks who theorize that humanity has kind of gone through a number of these catastrophic events, whether it's a meteor hitting or giant volcanoes, but is there one thing in particular that is driving this idea for you? That we might be facing this type of catastrophe.
I think there are a lot of things that are coming together. And I see catastrophe up ahead, but partly I think that's how I am. I like to imagine the worst because it's interesting to me. Not that I want the worst, but I like thinking about what might happen. In fact, thinking about it is one way of preparing or even preventing a catastrophe. If you don't think about it, then I think you're in more trouble. And in fact, one of the reasons, one of the things I hope this book will do is start conversations about what's happening, what might be done, how to approach it, how things might work out afterward. Because I think talking about things is useful in all kinds of ways. Now, I think I strayed from your question. You asked whether it's more like Star Trek or what was the other part?
Or the result of some kind of catastrophe and
dystopian. And I see climate change and the question of energy as the center of that. The question of what does our human civilization run on? What makes it work? And when you look at that, you also think about what would make it not work. So fossil fuels are at the center of it. And if we didn't have them, on the one hand, we wouldn't be able to do many of the things that we do. And on the other hand, we wouldn't be destroying the world. So it's a very, very hard balance. I have, of course, no idea what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But I thought about it, and I wrote this book about it.
Well, you've been thinking about it a lot. What was there one thing in particular that kind of sparked this desire to write about this subject?
It may have begun quite a few years ago when I built a little house. I didn't build it with my own two hands, but I had it built that was in the mountains, far enough away from any power line that I couldn't run electricity to it. And so I bought some solar panels, which were pretty new at that time. And so most of the house was run by the sun. And I loved that. I thought that was such a wonderful idea. So that may have been one thing that got me thinking on the positive side. Another thing probably was that, there have been some terrible wildfires mm-hmm. in Northern California. Mm-hmm. And I was ousted by one of them from the place where I live and had to go live somewhere else for 5 weeks while rebuilding and repairing was done. And that was something, I had never seen anything like that before, mm-hmm. like fire that burns in the way that fire did.
Yeah. That's such a terrifying, just to even imagine being part, your home being engulfed by a wildfire like that. I have a hard time imagining it, and I imagine to actually be part of that is really life-changing.
Well, definitely, I would say so. Even though I have to admit, I was not here where I live on the night that the fire came because I was at my book club in a different city. I was very lucky that way. But still, the fire came so close that everything where I live was either burned or smelled like smoke. Pipes were destroyed, lines were down. And so I had to move, for a while.
Yeah. One of the things that we encourage here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, obviously, is for parents to read with their kids and to continue to read with their kids way beyond the point that their kids are reading independently. I actually think that, obviously when we're reading with our babies and helping them learn vocabulary and what the different letters sound like, that's an incredibly important time in their life, and there's so many benefits for that. But I think the benefits continue when we continue to read with our kids and have conversations with our kids. Those conversations that we have when we're reading a book like Project F can be so important. And I'm wondering, just what are some of the conversations that kind of jump out to you that families can have as they're reading Project F together?
Oh, I think there are a lot. I have invented things in the story that will be controversial. For instance, the world at one point in the story appears to be run by a king and a queen. And we don't have, at this point in our country, we don't have a king and a queen. So one question could be, why is there a king and a queen? Also, a great many things that our current world depends on are gone in this future world. And so another question could be, what would life be like if you didn't have all these things that I think many kids take, I think kids take for granted because they've always been there. Mm-hmm. Cars, TV, cell phone, electric light, all of these things. What would life be like? And I learned when I wrote City of Ember, I learned that to a lot of kids, this dark city, which is not meant to be a pleasant place, was fascinating to them. And there were kids who wrote to me and said, I would love to live in the City of Ember. And that was surprising to me because it's a terrible place, really. It's running out of everything, and it's likely to collapse. But I think the strangeness of it, and in some ways the freedom of it, was appealing to some kids.
Interesting to use that idea that this place which is so desolate and running out of everything and horrifying to some people, you think could be freeing for other kids. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I'm not sure if freeing is the right word, but exciting. Mm. One of the main characters, Lina, is a messenger. She runs all over the city. She knows her way around. She visits all kinds of different places. And there were a lot of kids who said that's what they would like to do. Also, the kids in that story have real responsibilities. They start a job by the time they're 12 years old. So they are taken seriously in a way that maybe some kids are not today.
That is, I think you hit on something very, very important. It seems like adulthood and, the time when kids are taking on responsibilities keeps getting pushed back further and further and further. I think that there are a lot of college kids out there who are maybe ready to graduate with their bachelor's diploma or even getting their master's, who have never had a quote unquote real job and never had any kind of real responsibility. That's something that's hard for me to kind of imagine because I'm, I was that kid in third and fourth grade that had the paper route and had to come home and a good chunk of the little bit of money that I was making was going to help pay for the bills in our home. And so I felt that sense of responsibility at a very young age. And I didn't look at it as a hardship. To me, it was like, yeah, I can do this. You know, I'm only 9-10 years old, but I'm contributing. My work is important and is making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important. And I think along with that goes kids finding out what they're interested in. Not every kid will have a job. Mm-hmm. You had jobs. I didn't have jobs. I mean, I had household jobs when I was a kid, but I spent a lot of time finding out about things that I was just naturally interested in and that sent me in particular directions in life. So, for instance, or that didn't end up sending me in any direction, but attached me to the world in some way. So I was very much of a reader always. Reading led me to writing at a young age. I was also really interested in bugs. You know, I would go out in the garden and collect butterflies and caterpillars and look at them. And that has not led me to be a scientist, but that sort of thing gives me some directions. Mm-hmm. I will read about dinosaurs, for instance. I was fascinated by dinosaurs. There are a lot of things I'm interested in. And I do wonder, now this is a very kind of crotchety old person thing to say, but I do wonder if I had a phone to look at and video games and things, if I would have been distracted from finding out what is interesting to me, particularly to me.
Yeah. Well, I agree. But I've only known you for a little bit. I have a feeling you would have broken through the video game crutch. I think that you have a curiosity that would have gone beyond the flashy things on the screen, and I think you would have discovered those caterpillars and butterflies.
I certainly hope so. Yeah. I think so, yeah.
You know, on the one hand, Project F, thinking about that time, that future is kind of terrifying. Does this ever keep you up at night thinking, oh, that could be the world that we're facing in the future?
Yes, definitely. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Are you hopeful that the conversations that your books are igniting are going to be part of the inspiration for our kids and their kids to find ways to mitigate some of the damage that has been done already?
I just don't know the answer to that, but we all do know that people who are 10 years old today are the ones who are going to be living in the world that we're in the process of making, let's just say. And so there are many proposed kinds of solutions to all this, if you're talking specifically about climate change. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether any of those solutions is really practical. I don't know. And it will be years before we find out. So I can't answer that question, I think. I just don't know. My tendency is to look on the dark side, because the more I read, the more I see that. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that's the direction we're going.
Well, I'm one of those glass half filled guys to the point where I annoy a lot of the people in my life because I'm very positive. I'm hoping that families that read Project F and they start talking about what is running our society, you know, we're talking about energy and what powers that. I'm hoping that at some point the people, as they read this book, will say, you know what, we're the wrong thing is running our society. Maybe what we need to do is to depend on love and caring and kindness to run our society, and that's going to be the thing that helps us move forward and avoid this kind of dystopian view of a future that you're talking about in Project F.
Well, I agree with that, and I think that Project F, the way things have turned out in that story, is not dystopian at all. In fact, I have had people read the book and say, oh, I would be happy to live in a world like that. I think it sounds great. So the road toward getting there from where we live to 300 or 500 years in the future is unknown and probably very rocky. But with the kinds of things you're talking about, which I think come down to a true love for the world where we live, which is, as far as we know, the only place like it in the universe, is what we need. That's what we need to keep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Project F and find out more about you.
Well, easy to find out about Project F. It is in the bookstores. So you can go out and read it. And, I think there are things about me online. I don't know. I think there's a lot of, when Ember came out, it was used a lot in schools, and some teachers made up entire curriculums around it so that it would be in the English class, in the science class, in the social studies class, and that was wonderful. I don't think that will happen with this book, but if you look up City of Ember school projects or something like that, there's a ton of information out there.
Wonderful.
And it's some about me, too.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Project F, brand new middle grade novel from our guest, Jeanne DuPreau. Jeanne, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We are so grateful that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedly Magic on Twitter. If you are on LinkedIn, please connect with Jed Doherty. We also have a Reading with Your Kids page on LinkedIn. We would love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Authors, click on the Authors Click Here button to find out how you can be a guest here in the show and find out how we can help you celebrate your book with the world. And also, parents, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com to download our free online magazine. Hey, we want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our amazing guest. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Chris Doherty, Ann O'Leary, Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.